Well, dear friends, my name is Renée Rasmussen, and I am the president of the Musicians Union in Norway. It's a pleasure for me to wish you welcome to this seminar about freedom of expression in the field of music. And in spite of the rather depressing topic, this is a very, very happy day for me and my colleagues. In 2011, a former vice president of the Norwegian Musicians Union, Mr. Lothe, Eriksen, he's here, who now sits here as a moderator for today's debate, came to me and proposed that the union should initiate a safe city scheme for music performers and composers, similar to the safe city scheme for writers, initiated in the early 1990s. The board of the Norwegian Musicians Union immediately adopted the idea, and we have since been promoting the project to national and regional authorities in the Nordic countries, and to some cities that we thought could be willing to act as hosts for persecuted music professionals from around the world. The idea has gained widespread support. Last autumn, the FIM Congress, 61 musicians' union from around the world, adopted the resolution supporting the SafeMUSE project and Freemuse work for strengthening the freedom of artistic expression. SafeMUSE is founded by MFO, LO, UD, KUD, and NOPA. I'm not going to translate that. If you don't know what that is, ask me afterwards. Now we are very close to reach the first goal, as we just have signed an agreement with the Norwegian city Harstad and the county of Troms, which means that Harstad is going to be the very first safe haven for a musician or composer in need of protection. I think we should give the representatives for those local authorities a big hand, and you can raise up actually. Yay! And then I will give the floor to Jan, who also happens to be our project manager for Freemuse, to lead us through the seminar. Welcome. Thank you for your attention, everybody. Thank you.
So, good to see you here. As Renée told, I'm Lothe Eriksen, and I'm hosting this day's event here. But first of all, I'd just like to introduce the idea of SafeMUSE. And I've been asked, why are you doing this? What's this idea? Why? And on the personal level, as a bit younger guy in the early 70s, I was following what was happening in Latin America and Chile. And what then happened to Victor Jara in the September days of '73 became an eye-opener for me, being a young music student then, and seeing that playing music also could be fatal. And as you know, Victor Jara, he was important singer, songwriter, and also collector of traditional Chilean Andean music. He was one of the first to go when Pinochet took over the power in Chile in September 12, '73. And his life ended in the Chile Stadium, where lots of people were gathered. And his work stands as a glowing, it stands glowing for the protection of the local cultures, the national cultures, and the free word. His songs still lives and is still vibrant in the Latin American and in the world culture. So that's why when I then learned to know the idea that Freemuse, when Freemuse was established some 13, 14 years ago, I've been following the work of Freemuse, and when we were building up the new national venue for traditional music and dance here in Oslo, I was leading that work. We had in our program to establish this as a safe haven for colleagues from other parts of the world. I didn't continue to work there, so after 2010, when I stopped working for Eriksen, I then contacted Renée and asked if this was something that the MFO would like to take on. So what the idea is, in short, is that it's based on the same idea that ICON is now organizing from Stavanger, being the organizer or the secretariat for the safe haven system for writers, authors. So in basic, it's leaning on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and Article 19 saying everybody has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media, regardless of frontiers. And this should also go for musicians, artists, and composers. So, inspired by the scheme for authors, Safe Haven scheme for authors, we then started to develop this on the music area, and the idea is to adopt the program, more or less, that ICON has developed for the music area, where persecuted musicians, music composers, and tradition bearers can have a possibility to continue their work in a safe environment. We just now then are starting our pilot phase with Harstad, and we are very glad that this now has become a very concrete thing. And we're doing it together with Freemuse, being a clearinghouse for this, finding the artists, securing that this actually is music artists that is persecuted. And it's supported by NOPA, a partner in this, the Norwegian Society for Composers and Lyricists. And also we have the sister organization in Sweden, SKAP, Swedish Society for Popular Composers, Music Composers, and the RFOD, which is the Swedish Folk Music and Dance Association, and the Suomen Musiikkojen, the Finnish Musicians Union. These are the formal partners. And then we are working closely together with lots of friends to develop this. And for the time being, then, we're doing this from the Musicians Union base. But when we are up and running, SafeMUSE will become an independent entity, but of course with deep roots in the music environments. This is in short the idea, and to give us a bit more insight in what's happening for some musicians. Actually, all too many musicians are facing big problems, some fatal problems. We have Reitov here. He's the program director and co-founder of Freemuse. And please, Ole, if you give us some perspective on your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Is there a problem? Yes. According to international conventions, censorship is illegal. How many countries have we documented censorship in the past 14 years? 120. There is a slight problem here. Of course, the problem goes from anything that you're simply censored, you're not allowed to perform, you don't get permission to organize concerts, to being persecuted in the sense that you are put into trials, you're put into prison, you are being killed, and before that you may even be tortured. So that's the scale of the problem. Freemuse is an organization. You can check out the website, so I'm not going to talk a lot about that. But just to give you a very short idea about why music is being censored, we could just look at some of these arguments that has been used. I don't know if any one of you recognize, maybe you've heard it even in your family, some people who wants to become a musician. Why should you do that? That's not a proper education. So the first one comes from an Islamic scholar, but it could come from many others. The one about the devil, can you recognize that? Could easily be a Christian. It was a Swedish missionary in the 18th century. I'm not going to go through the world history now in 15 minutes, but the missionaries went round in northern part of Sweden and told the fiddle players to burn the instruments, which many of them did. And of course, you know it from the Lestadianer, who was very influential in the Sami culture. So I remember when Marie Boyne started talking about how she felt the pressure in her family when she took interest in her own music. It was because of that Christian tradition. Unfavorable to health. I got that when I started school. My parents got a small leaflet. This was in the 50s, saying that children shouldn't listen to music late in the evening because then they couldn't sleep and couldn't concentrate, and the music shouldn't be loud. Of course, they were absolutely right. That came from Fox, the inventor, I think, of cornflakes, but also a Quaker. And the Quakers in the beginning had this thing about music that it should be banned. So if we look into our own history, our Christian or whatever tradition we come from, all that is there. I normally talk about the Christian Talibans of Scandinavia and the Norse of the 18th, 19th century. Khomeini, of course, had a complete ban on music when he came into, he made a fatwa on music, except for military music. Somehow military music is never banned. I don't know why, but and he tried to retract it, but that's still a big discussion in Iran, whether and which kinds of music are haram, illegal. So Knut, who sits here, has been playing with wonderful musicians from Iran. Mazavadad is one. She cannot perform in her own country. She can go and perform here for us. Seductive, yes, good old Plato, wonderful philosopher. He knew everything about life, what is dangerous, what you should and what you should not. He had a lot of ideas about good music and bad music. So here's for those who teach music, go back to Plato and you have it all. And finally, this is a punk group who was very popular, and they were invited to a festival in the US, but the authorities felt that this was, and this has been used in many times in history, inappropriate representation of our culture. Do we hear this about nationalism and issues like that? Anyway, we're here for music, and this is what we want to see. Wonderful music, people coming in, fantastic situation in the middle of absolutely nowhere, northern Mali. 2 years ago, this is how it looks like now. As you know, there is a war going on in Mali. All music was banned by the Islamists, which actually don't come from this area. They came from other parts of the world, basically. And the reason that it has no response in the population is, of course, because in Mali there's never been a problem with music and Islam before. It's a country that loves music, that produces the most wonderful music. So those coming in and believing that they are representing the right kind of religion do not have any response with the population. Of course, this kind of modern repression of music really started with the Taliban, who had a complete ban. They were burning instruments. They would make public executions of tapes, and it was a disaster. But burning records is not just a phenomenon in the Muslim world. These are young American boys trying to kill music of Dixie Chicks, who happened to protest against the war in Iraq. What is the role of a musician? It sounds sometimes like a cliche, the voice of the voiceless. But that's in fact what happens in many countries, especially in countries where you have high illiteracy. The singers, the musicians, become that other voice of the people and represents aspirations, hopes, frustrations. This is what happened at Tahrir Square. Rami Essam, he was up there. He was doing that very song that got people together. You know, demonstrating for 7 days is not a piece of cake. You know, you go down and you need something. That was what Pete Seeger understood using We Shall Overcome. Joan Baez did that. Rami Essam did that. And that is what music can do. And that is why many musicians are also targeted. Because Rami, he was tortured by the police. They picked him up. But he went out, he went back. And that's what's happening. They go back if they can, but the authorities know exactly why they target these people, and that spread fears. These are just some of the cases we are working on at the moment. You can look at it, the website. There are some good news as well. Sometimes they succeed coming out. Lapir is now, unfortunately, in asylum. He couldn't continue. Arya got out of prison. He's from Iran after one intensive week of pressure. We don't know why they did that. But eventually, we believe that with this ice-breaking thing from Harstad, it's a very good news, which brings a lot of hope to a lot of people. So it's very important, and I just want to congratulate you in Harstad for taking that decision. A lot of cities have talked about this for years, but you always need someone in a ministry, in an administration, in an organization to say, yes, we're going to do it. And that's so important. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ole. We rush on because we have just this 1 hour, and we have a fine panel here to discuss around these issues. But before that, we'd like to say hello to Harstad. So please welcome Henry Andersen. What's it called? Deputy, what's rådman?
City manager.
Deputy City Manager of Harstad.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, it's a great honor for me to represent the municipality of Harstad, the first safe music haven. Harstad is a city far north, 300 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. The climate may be cold, but we try to keep our hearts warm. Therefore, I think we will manage the challenge to be a good, safe music haven for any persecuted artist, musician, or composer. Harstad is a city with 24,000 inhabitants. People living here are common with big changes between darkness and light. During the winter, we have almost 2 months where the sun is below the horizon, but instead we have Aurora Borealis, the magic northern light. In summer, it is quite the opposite, with 24 hours daylight and of course midnight sun. We hope the person coming to Harstad will be inspired also by this, feel a change and have brighter days. For us, it will be important to connect the person to our cultural organizations, and I will mention some. The Arts Festival of North Norway has been held in Harstad since 1965. What began as a musical event with a particular focus on the meeting between amateurs and professionals is today a top-shelf international event that presents and produces a vast well of musical genres, as well as performance arts, visual arts, literature, and cinematic arts. The Arts Festival also has a strong focus on children and young people and includes people with different disabilities. Harstad is also the hometown of the Norwegian Army Band. We call it Forsvarets Distriktsmusikkorps Nord-Norge. And the city hosts the annual festival for new classical music called Ilios. Troms County's Cultural Department is also situated in Harstad with 9 professional musicians. These organizations will cooperate to build a strong, safe music haven. On behalf of the municipality of Harstad, I want to thank SafeMUSE and Norwegian Musicians Union for giving us this great opportunity to take care of this great and important project. Thank you.
We are looking very much forward to continue the cooperation with Harstad and Troms. So to our panel, Deeyah, known to Norwegian public as Deepika some years ago. Please have a seat. She is an artist, human rights activist, and runs the production company Fuse, which now also has Deeyah left Norway, and is now living in London, but she's partly coming back, establishing Fuse in Norway, and we're also looking forward to do some projects together. Knut Reiersrud. Probably some of you both heard and seen him before. Artist, God-blessed finger mover and guitar player.
God blessed.
And Ole, please. And then Edvard Valberg, punk cellist. And being a cellist myself, this is a great pleasure to introduce Edvard, artist and front figure in the Kristiansand-based group Honningbarna. And actually, I'd like to start out with you, Edvard. We had a little talk. We don't know each other too well from before, but we had a little talk before today. And you told something about the obligation for an artist.
Yeah.
What's the obligation for the artist Edvard Valberg?
quite many things, but as an artist all over the world in all times, I had a obligation to describe and to put the words to, or put the music to, or put the paintings to describe how people are feeling in their period of time, which Bach did, which we try to do, which everybody tries to do. And when we see all over the world now with youth being quite angry, and with very good reason, losing the jobs, losing the opportunities for a life, it's almost like there's a new blank generation coming, and they're angry, and there needs to be music to describe how people are feeling and describe how the situation really is. So we, as a, guess you can call us, political band, feel an obligation to try to describe this and try to encourage people to do it.
Then there is also a small paragraph in the website of Freemuse on the group Honningbana. You were releasing an album in Germany.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, we got a song called Free Palestine, which didn't go down that well with the German public, or what people would think would go down well with the German public. They're obviously quite sore after World War II with the Jews, but they don't understand, because it's quite problematic. It's like, it's really easy conflict, but it's just people are making it quite hard by not being able to separate the politics of Israel to the Jews and their beliefs to their political system and what they're doing politically and military. But they were not willing to take that risk, so to speak, to people knowing this. So we were forced to make a choice. If we were to keep Free Palestine on the record, nobody would work with us. Nobody would release the album. Nobody would touch it. So that actually came as quite a shock to us, because actually in Norway also, when we when this came out in Dagbladet, it got to be the most commented piece that day or two. But we all know what's lurking around in the commentary boxes.
Yeah, we do. Deeyah, your history is a bit different, but although related to this, in a way.
Yes.
You just met Knut before this meeting here now.
Yes.
And you hadn't seen each other since
20 years back.
Yeah, 20 years. Long
Yeah.
time. Long time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, Knut was younger 20 years ago, but you sure was younger 20 years ago.
I was, yeah. We both were. I was quite little.
But I looked younger.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But
No,
what
we had the
happened?
great privilege of working together when I think we started working together when I was 14, and when I was 15, our album came out, which was in 1992, I think we decided. And it was obviously a great privilege for me to get to work with, being a 15-year-old, getting to work with remarkable sort of musical geniuses like Knut was just, an artist's dream, a young artist's dream come true. That being said, coming from the cultural background that I come from, or the cultural background, I should say, of my parents. My father is originally from Pakistan. My mother is Afghan. I myself was born and raised in Oslo, Norway. I started music when I was 7 years old, and was very influenced by Norwegian society in terms of it being founded on freedom of expression, it being founded on women's rights, it being overall a free society. But the society that my parents came from is a society where music and the arts and also the position of women is not particularly strong and not particularly easy to reconcile. And I thought that this would be something that is dealt with in their homelands. But as it happens, obviously there are communities from those countries that now also live here who have not been able to shed some of those very restrictive views of what art is, what position women have, and particularly women artists. You know, where do they fit in? And I can tell you where they fit in, or at least in my case, they were very much put into the box of, if you are a female and a performer, then you are the equivalent of a prostitute. And then the problem streaming from people viewing you as a prostitute is suddenly your right as a human being is degraded to such an extent that both myself and my family were actually subjected to a lot of threats, a lot of harassment, and a lot of very, very difficult times where my family actually became completely isolated from their friends and the general community, to the point where I couldn't walk outside in Oslo alone without something happening. So I left.
And this was 18...
This was in well, it started pretty much from the beginning of my career. We used to have delegations, I call them, of men who would come to our house.
We're not talking about the 1800s or the
1700s? No. This was the 80s and the 90s, and it got to, the boiling point for me was in 1996, which is when I packed my bags and bought a one-way ticket and went and left for London. And I was speaking about this, I'll wrap up very quickly, but I was speaking about this to somebody the other day, and they were saying, you know, what was the hardest part for you about all these experiences? And for me, actually, the threats and the harassment and the sort of marginalization of my family was very tough, but in some ways what was tougher was the silence surrounding all my experiences. You know, I like I said, I am Norwegian. My passport is Norwegian. I was born and raised in Norway. I don't know any other country. This is my home. It always was. It always will be. This is where I understood what life and the world is about, and what the world can be. And the fact that I experienced some of the things that I experienced, and unlike the comment field for you getting filled up, for me, there was absolutely silence. I was on the front covers of the newspapers in Norway, people saying she's gotten threatened out of Norway, blah, blah, blah. But there was not one sound made by anybody saying, this is unacceptable, or this is acceptable. You know, I mean, either, I'm not saying people should agree with me, but there was no agreement or disagreement about this. And what hurt me the most was, why is that? You know, what is it about me? You know, am I not Norwegian enough, perhaps? Am I not, you know, what is it about me that doesn't warrant a reaction? At least you got a reaction, you know, so that's a start. If there's a reaction, even if there's a negative one, there's the beginning of a conversation. Anyway, so very briefly, that's what it was.
Thank you. Yeah. And Knut, then 20 years ago, playing with this young girl, and seeing what happened.
After she'd played with a younger Barak for a while, talking about giants.
And this is not the only artist you played with that has had problems around them.
No?
Like Masavadat, for instance.
Oh yeah, she came like 10 years after. But just a question, because what we did, your first album, is kind of it's very, the lyrics are quite direct and it's meant to be kind of political. But that didn't make any, not too much of a fuzz. And then the other album came, which was more like an entertainment album, and that made a big impact.
Well, actually,
people really reacted to that. That's kind of ironic.
Well,
that an album that was supposed to be political didn't make any reaction, and then the other album came, and bow.
Well, in reality, there was reactions to the first one as well, but the reaction that came from it wasn't a public reaction. So we didn't have mullahs publicly saying in a newspaper that she should expect threats in Oslo. So the first album, our album, the reactions that got was directly to my father. And that's when it started.
Right.
Basically, people saying that we do not allow, I remember this sentence really, really well, we don't allow our sons to do this. Why are you allowing your daughter to walk into this? But you're right, in its own way, it was actually much more political, wasn't it? But it's, for me, it's not been so much the matter of the content of what I do being political. It's just been the fact that I am a woman, and my choice, my personal choice of profession, in it being music in itself is a defiant act. And therefore it elicits that sort of response. And you know, we've had some of these conversations as well, as, you know, have things changed in Norway? And I would like to say that a lot of things have changed in Norway, but, you know, it does beg the question, you know, where are the other Pakistani women in Norway doing this? You know, I'm still looking. I'm still looking for her. And she doesn't exist yet. So there's obviously some sort of knots here that have not been unpicked yet.
But a question, I've done a lot of music collaborations with people from different parts, and some good and some quite a few bad ones. The really good one is the one called, and it's the best album title ever, you can't beat it. It's Lullabies from the Axis of Evil. And it's so good, it's such a good album title. You can't beat it. It's that came to his mind, Erik Hillestad, the producer, like 2 days after Bush had his, what do you call it, State of Union speech in 2002, was it? After 9/11, when he talked about the axis of evil and really bad stuff. And so he just did the opposite thing. He made positive music coming from women singing for the children to get them asleep. And such a good thing. And that was such a great album. And that was a huge amount of singers, of course, female singers. And some were barely dared to sing. I remember this girl that worked for the Red Cross in Afghanistan. She was so scared they hadn't sung since 20 years back or something, you know, since maybe, I guess the Soviet would allow them to sing, but there was nothing to sing about. It was just a struggle. So the whole music culture of Afghanistan goes way back. And but she knew a few songs because her mother used to sing them for her. And this was a young girl, maybe 18, 19 years old. But she was singing this slow because she was scared. And it's really, I think it's the track number 3 or something on the album. And we had to just crank it up to get some kind of noise from her coming through the speakers. And she was actually very scared singing in a room much smaller than this inside the Red Cross building. Strange. And of course we met, that's when I met Masa and her sister Majran. And so we have done quite a few albums after that. Most notably, maybe the one with the blues singer, because the blues singer Mighty Sam McLean. Because I guess that's part of my setting. I have a blues background, despite the fact that I'm Norwegian. But I started listening to this music when I was 5, 6 years old, so it's kind of in my backbone. And blues is the music. Today, blues is quite old-fashioned stuff, but 100 years ago, it was really revolutionary. It revolutioned the whole music scene, the whole history of music. I mean, there's African-American music and there's the European tradition, and those combined together, they made rock and roll, they made jazz music, they made, you know, all the music that kids listen to today. And that really happened 100 years ago. And blues was the first music to sing about me. The sun is going to shine in my back door someday. Hope for the future, you know, like Hamsun or Strindberg would do writing books, you know, they talk about me, the person, you know, the individuals. Before that, everybody sang about kings and queens and gods. Big people, and gods and big people, you know. So that's really revolutionary, and combining the blues setting or the blues aura with struggling musicians from all parts of the world. Because, and also, you know, you have the pentatonic, that 5-note scale that brings people together. That made it really easy to work with them, and it's been many fantastic days of recording and playing concerts all over.
But it's quite interesting because, like you said, what the youth are listening to today, because, like you said, was a social no-no to listen to blues in its days, and it's to rock and roll in its days. Now, if you just listen to like electronica or techno music, or like a huge part of the youth today listen to, that was also like actually an illegal movement. Like in '94, there was these laws that the conservative government in England created that stated that if 100 or more people were gathered, listened to music characterized by repetitive beats, the police could just go in and say this has to stop.
So Ravel's Bolero is never played again.
Right. And John Lee Hooker.
Yeah. But the same law went for any uniform, any policeman in uniform could stop a person if he just that he suspected that person was going to a raid within a 5-mile radius. He could say, no, stop, you have to go the other way. And this is in '94. It's like when I told that to one of my mates, it was like, fuck, we were alive.
That's true. And it's in fact the same year as the Falun Gong in China. The Falun Gong they were just peaceful people doing stuff like this.
Yeah,
but they gathered, and they would be bigger than the Communist Party. It's a threat. But they were still doing that. That was all they did.
And the
it was going to be bigger than the Communist Party. Forget it. Stop it.
And the fascinating thing about it is that this is all like when what I have experienced with like censor or like government saying no to music is all actually from the West. And that's quite fascinating actually, because we think as the last bastion of freedom here in the West, but it's actually not like that at all, is it? And also about and here in Norway also, because if you're a band that don't want to be on big commercial, don't want to represent beer marks, or if you don't want to do those sort of things, if you got ideals you want to live by, you have a big handicap. Because without like Urørt or NRK and things like that, you sort of been held back by commercialism actually.
It's true.
Because all those voices that criticize things are often or new things don't go very well down with the public often. So you're held back actually by commercialism, plus all the things like the rave laws and stuff.
You're talking about corporate censorship, and of course a lot of people know about this, but it's interesting that the way it works in the US, for instance, with the parental advisory sticker, in the sense that we don't have that system here, but you still get the same CDs with parental advisory. You cannot buy a CD with parental advisory in Walmart. You have to, as an artist, sign a contract with record companies to make two versions. One which is the sanitized Walmart version, and the other one which you can get in some kind of outlet you have to really look for. Now, what does that tell us? Well, it tells on one level a concern of parents, which may be very reasonable. It was a shock to Al Gore's wife when her daughter was listening to a Prince song about masturbation. So that's one level, and one should never sort of just, okay, that's stupid, but it's a real issue here, also in schools. But what's more interesting is, I think that you can go to Walmart and you cannot buy a parental advisory CD, but you could buy a weapon. And I think that somehow illustrates what we're talking about here, that some moral issues become so important because of whatever, but other issues which to me are the real serious issues are not dealt with. And somehow you've summed up very well the complexity of censorship, because already the slave owners tried to ban music because they knew there was power in the music. You were talking about the lullabies. When I traveled in Pakistan in 79, 80, when the first refugees came over from Afghanistan, some of the refugee camps had a total ban, including on lullabies. You could go in one camp and it was banned, in another camp it was not banned. And that was the pre-Taliban in those days, heavily supported by CIA, because they knew if they could develop really lunatics, suicide bombers, they could kick the Soviet out of Afghanistan. But we should never forget the history of how these things came and how somehow music was always a part of it, because it was a fight of, it's a question of power relationships. Who can control the other, what to do and what not? Last year we did a workshop in Kabul and got together musicians, people from media and whatever, and we started trying to discuss what is the most dangerous in music today in Afghanistan. Is it criticizing the president? Is it women performing? And they all agreed. President is on a scale from 1 to 10, about 5. It's not that dangerous to criticize. What is the most dangerous is, and that's on 9, to criticize the warlords. The most dangerous, and that's a 10, is to question religion or to play heavy metal.
So there are some genres around that is harder to get hold of or to perform than others. And heavy metal is one of those.
It's a big heavy metal scene in Tehran. We met some.
Yeah, it's a big underground scene.
They came to our concerts.
Yeah.
But it's really it's quite ironic, because when we're out playing, we meet a lot of heavy metal bands. And they're like so proper badass and stuff when they're on stage. It's like fuck you and you all you believe. Like really good chaps. Like,
good guys.
You know, so it's
But the interesting thing is that in the Middle East, most of the heavy metal bands come from very proper upper middle class families. They have a lot of resources. Intellectually, I know this is a stereotype, but we made a report on heavy metal from China to Morocco, and Reitov, who's American metalhead, said that, well, in one heavy metal musician in the Arab countries, you've got more brains than in the rest of the world. But I'm not talking about that. But it becomes this focus of opposition. So you have these people in Saudi Arabia driving out in the dunes, doing heavy metal concerts far away from authorities. And because music has always been the symbol of oppression against this and this, whether it's punk or rock, and it's always the latest, like you talked about, the latest genre is always what you try to attack, because it's different and it represents something you can control.
Maybe it's because music is hip, and hip is something that binds a few people together and the others are not able to see what's going on. I read this book from an author, John Leland, and he found out that hip is a part of the African American culture. It comes from Wolof in Western Africa. It means happy in Wolof, and that means someone who sees something that the others don't see. And that makes sense. You know, the slaves came and they said, I'm bad. You know, fuck you, bad stuff. But they meant the flip side. They meant totally the opposite. You know, I'm good. He's a bad motherfucker. He's a great guy. But he says to his master, to his slave owner, he's a bad motherfucker. You know, and so he fools him. And that's the good thing about music, and that makes the music very strong, you know, because music is hip. Very few people understand what's really going on.
quite funny then that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It's quite funny that Thatcher said that about when he said hippie, and she said, and I quote, "I'm only too pleased to make life as difficult as possible for these hippie convoys."
Right.
I wonder if we should open, if there's any questions or comments from any of you. Just sitting, listening, everything's clear. Hallelujah.
Just a minor question. Is there any other cities who will succeed Harstad?
Of course.
Hopefully.
They're there, but they're not stepped forward yet. Actually, seriously speaking, we have approached, could we say, or talked to several Swedish cities. We are in very good connection with the Arts Council in Sweden, who have been pushing this question in developing the scheme for authors in more artistic genres. So we have talked to several Swedish cities. The most serious discussion we've had with Stockholm, and they've done. They've had a discussion internally in Stockholm, and they've done this survey on how to pull this through. But this far, Harstad beat them. And we've also had close discussions with Copenhagen. They had it up in their culture, what's it called, Styre, Culture Council, in December. And the signals before that was very positive. We'll do it, but it's not always that politics goes just that straight way. So they're probably a round or two before Copenhagen is in. There are other Swedish cities, I'm told, that is interested. So I hope this event now helps them to step forward. In addition, we're in contact with Finland and also are waiting for responses from Iceland. So we are starting out in the Nordic countries and hope to have a few more cities during this year.
Can you just say a few words about how you will take care of them in Oslo?
How we will take care of them? Actually, they come as it's called refugees. They come on this kind of normal refugee program to Norway. So there's an official program they are following, and they are having. Harstad is supposed to give them a house, a furnitured house, and they're having a fee every day to live from. In addition, Harstad has gone into an agreement with Kultur I Troms, and Kultur I Troms is a producing entity. So, in cooperation with Harstad, Kultur I Troms will help out to make events, make concerts, productions where this musician can take part.
It's a very relevant question, and it's also complex in the sense that, first of all, you have to find out what are the local conditions. I think they're very good in the sense that Harstad and Troms have prepared themselves well to understand this. But also from the experiences that ICON has with the writers, you can have sometimes candidates which have suffered a lot, which may have traumas. And one of the things is that you have to be very realistic from the beginning, that you may not have that person who gets out, talk to everyone, hey guys, it's great being here, because they've been through very serious situations. And the more realistic you are about that, there are also family situations to deal with. So I think it's a very interesting process now to clearly discuss through this, understand all the flop sides of it. I mean, this is a bright day. This is the ice-breaking day. But the hard work, the realistic work, including the screening work that we do, is to have that very open debate and discussion with the musicians, so they also prepare to understand what situation they're coming into, and so it's a lot of hard work there. It would be nice always to. Now this is just happening, but I know many writers who came basically just wanted to be alone, just want to sit and continue creating, because that's what an artist needs to do, is to create work. And if you've been in a situation for a long time where you don't have a situation where you can create, that would be your first priority, really.
Any more comments before we wrap it up? We're around, so you may talk to us afterwards. So, thank you so much. This is the kind of first for a project that I'm very much looking forward to cooperate with Harstad in, with these great people in Freemuse, of course with artists. There are already artists knocking on my door saying, oh, we'd like to play with these guys coming. And of course, we'd like to also play with other cities. So please step forward. But then, thank you so much. This is production here, which Freemuse and Deeyah is responsible for. Maybe you have it, or it's on time you have it.
No?
So, thank you so much, and thank you.
Thank you and congratulations.